Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Daniel Kaplan, and my mission is to make psychology accessible to all. In today's video, I'm going to talk about personality disorders. And I'm going to be doing a series on all 10 of the personality disorders. But in order to do that, I thought I should establish some of the basic understanding of personality disorders. So this video is designed to define what personality disorders are, what's the difference between normal personality and pathology, and a basic understanding of the various subtypes of personality disorders. And then later, we can talk about each of the 10 personality disorders in separate videos. So stay tuned for that as well. If you like what you hear, if you learn something new, give me a big thumbs up, hit the like button, subscribe, click the notifications tab, write a comment if you have a reaction to anything that you hear, and I read and respond to all. So without further ado, let's talk about personality disorders. So a good starting point is to define what personality is. So we, generally speaking, define personality as a long-term, relatively stable characteristic that one expresses. Personality is unique to the individual. We typically look at aspects of personality and we screen personality using personality traits. Now, there is a difference between personality traits and personality states. Traits we view as more long-term, relatively stable aspects of personality, whereas a state is more of a temporary period. For example, let's say a person is generally a happy individual and they lose a loved one. Well, even a happy individual is going to potentially become more sad because they lost a loved one. But through time, they're going to return to their happy demeanor after they mourn and heal. So that's what a trait is. It's more stable than a state. Now, traits can be inherited, they could be learned, or it could be a combination of both. Now, when personality works, it should be flexible and we should be able to adapt healthily to our environment. Now, what happens is with personality disorders, that flexibility is usually missing. So when we say, what is a personality disorder? It's more of an inflexible pattern of inner experience and outward behavior, right? This person demonstrates this in most of their interactions, and these patterns of behavior are seen through time, through years. Because it's a personality disorder, this person is likely to live with this condition their whole life. And this inflexibility could cause psychological pain. It could result in relational conflict. It could interfere with friendships, and it could interfere with one's job. And that it's a tough experience for people to live with. But that's what a personality disorder is. Now, the personality disorder is typically identified in adolescence to early adulthood. We don't, generally speaking, diagnose a personality disorder until an individual is 18 or older, right? So we refrain from early diagnosis because a lot of things that could be personality disorder looking, in quotes, could be adjustment to a phase of life, such as teenagers might have more rocky relationships, an unstable sense of self, difficulty with friendships, and so forth. But it many times goes away. So when we give a diagnosis, it's usually late adolescence or early adulthood. Now, personality disorders are very hard to treat, and it's because they tend to be chronic. They tend to be more global aspects of who the person is, and there tends to be a little more resistance to treatment in general when it comes to personality disorders. So they're very hard to treat, and some people can, go through life struggling and not be aware that they even have a personality disorder and only learn it much later when there's a significant conflict. So a lot of people don't even wind up in the treatment room. In terms of, well, what percent of people do we estimate has one form of a personality disorder or another? We estimate it to be around 9 to 13% of all adults may have a personality disorder. So our understanding of personality is, very, very much clearer than it used to be. We used to do personality sketches. We used to look for attributes in the Bible. We used to look at humors. And then this is what I'm going to talk to you about. In the 1800s, something called phrenology became very popular, where a person was believed to have different attributes based on the shape of their head. And if their head had more bumps and it was larger protrusion, they had greater abilities in that area. But if it was smaller or less pronounced, they had deficits. So these phrenology maps, like the one you see on the right, they describe different aspects of personality. And in reality, none of the labels are really true. Now, we talk about people like Franz Gall, who was a major player in phrenology, because for neuroscience, it did, further the discussion that different parts of the brain do different things. But the actual outcomes, phrenology got it wrong. So now let's talk about all 10 personality disorders. These are the criteria we're going to look for in general. So this is general. And then when I go through each of the personality disorders, they have their own unique elements as well. So in general, a person has to show a long-term, rigid personality style that relates to their inner experience as well as their behavior, that alters their thoughts, emotions, social interactions, or impulsivity. Now, you don't need all 4 of these. You can have just 2 and meet part A of the diagnosis. We also make sure that this characteristic is not part of a cultural issue, because some cultures have different personality styles, and we don't want to over-diagnose something that would be considered acceptable within one's culture. We also look for distress or impairment. Somehow this has got to either be bothersome to this individual or people around them, and it has to interfere with one or more domains of their life, such as work, family, friends, romantic relationships, the legal system, housing, et cetera. It could go on and on and on. But there have to be areas of impairment as well. So as I'm presenting this as an introduction, we tend to divide the 10 personality disorders into 3 clusters. And the cluster A, we refer to as odd or eccentric behavior. Cluster B, we describe as dramatic, emotional, or erratic behavior. And cluster C is more anxious or fearful behavior. Now, cluster A, we have 3 conditions: paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. And what you'll see is that each 3 of these have some aspects that are similar to schizophrenia, even though the person doesn't have schizophrenia. We're not diagnosing the person with schizophrenia necessarily. We're diagnosing them with a personality disorder, but they have some features. Cluster B, we have a lot of rocky relationships. So we see that oftentimes with antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and so forth, right? And then lastly, we talk about anxiety-driven personality disorders, the avoidant personality, dependent personality, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. In a previous video, we talked about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And now we're talking about obsessive compulsive personality disorder. In a subsequent video, I'm going to put a spotlight on obsessive compulsive personality disorder and explain the difference between OCD and OCPD. So keep an eye out for that as well. Now, in terms of personality disorders, I wouldn't be true to the literature if I didn't give a cautionary tale. So if we were to think about personality disorders, each of us might manifest some features of a personality disorder without being diagnosed with a personality disorder. So there's a wide spectrum of, quote, normal before it becomes abnormal. So you might see some aspects. Additionally, when we look at the disorders themselves, because of the clusters that we talked about, you can see some overlapping features. For example, if we look at a person who has narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, there might be more of a self-serving nature, right? So trying to make sure we can distinguish one disorder from another, a clinician has to do a good job, right? Sometimes there's disagreement, which is the second point, right? We have to do a better job making sure the diagnosis we give is the appropriate one. And we know that sometimes if we give a blind case study, one clinician might diagnose one disorder, another clinician might diagnose a different one, which poses questions about reliability and validity, right? And then we also have to be mindful that we don't over pathologize normal behavior. And as we talk about these conditions in society, it's so easy to slip into a framework where you diagnose where it's inappropriate. Now, these are the big picture items when we talk about personality disorders. I wanted you to understand what is personality, how does normal personality differ from a personality disorder related to the flexibility. I wanted you to understand how we conceptualize personality in the past and now. And then I wanted you to understand the three clusters of personality disorders, cluster A, B, and C, and also some cautionary tales. So I hope you found this video useful. In our next video, we're going to talk about paranoid personality disorder, which is a cluster A disorder. So I hope you found it useful. Once again, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe, click the notifications tab, throw me a comment below, and I want to turn this into a learning community, which will help me fulfill my mission of making psychology more accessible. Until next time, everybody, take care.